I've prepared some remarks because with a southern drawl like this, 15 minutes is no time at all. This is a tough room. That's fine. The hate makes me stronger. Thanks for that very kind introduction. I'm Derek. My co-author, Josh Inwood, could not be with us today. He sends his apologies. And this is our first NACIS meeting. I'm a rookie. Let's give some love here now. If you learn nothing else today, you'll learn how to feel, okay, after this talk. So we're very excited to be here. Very excited to share our ideas about the Living Black Atlas, which we've been working on for the last few years. Now, the Living Black Atlas is a phrase, is something that Josh and I have created to capture our interest in how black activists, scientists, educators, and communities have long engaged in mapping and geographic knowledge production as part of the politics of living against and beyond racism. We feel like the Living Black Atlas, this is one of the reasons we want to come here. We think the Living Black Atlas can be transformative in how we define cartography and reinterpreting many of the major moments of the black freedom struggle. And I purposely put up this few slides, a few pictures, and this map from the Black Panther Party, which many of us know about the Black Panther Party in terms of self-defense, the medical and food programs they established, but very few of us perhaps realize that they also engaged in a cartography of trying to propose and redraw police districts in protecting black communities. So our goals for today is to try to discuss the origin and ongoing work that we are doing with the Living Black Atlas. We want to invite you, our new friends, hope I can call you a friend, to document, amplify, and learn from the Living Black Atlas. And then I'm going to reflect very quickly but critically on this question of where, which seems to be sort of simplistic, but it actually packs a lot of different layers. Everybody okay? Yeah. All right. So one of the key points of origin for our conceptualizing of the Living Black Atlas is this tendency or tension in American civil rights memory. That central tension is that tendency to see freedom as given, which really downplays the agency of African Americans, both leaders and ordinary citizens, to create the conditions for their liberation. And Josh and I, along with a lot of other scholars, believe that it's important to recenter the labor, the resiliency, the creativity of black communities in producing their own freedom. Ruth Wilson Gilmore famously reminds us that freedom is a place, which is meant to capture the active and ongoing social bonds, institutions, locations, and resources that are used to dismantle oppressive systems. Josh and I have leaned, over the last several years, we've leaned very heavily into the idea of civil rights being work, which encompasses a whole host of emotional, physical, social, and intellectual labor that goes into the fight against racism. This has led us, since beginning to think of this way, this has led us to consider the role of mapping and other geospatial practices as freedom-producing labor and resources. And so one of the things I would like for us to encourage you to think about is thinking about how viewing mapping in this way as part of the work of freedom has the potential to redefine what counts as civil rights activism, and it can actually clearly define a much needed emancipatory capacity of cartography. So Josh and I first began to realize the need to explore the place of cartography and the American Civil Rights Movement when we were studying SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. SNCC was a youth-led 1960s grassroots anti-racist organization led by the folks like Ella Baker, Jim Foreman, and many others. Jim Foreman in particular placed a great deal of emphasis on developing SNCC's oppositional research and communication capacity. And as part of that insurgent research and communication agenda, SNCC created hand-drawn maps. Both conventional choropleth maps, like you see on the screen here, but also unconventional power maps, which are also on the screen. And they were used to directly plan protests and to track and challenge white supremacy. And as we have written, in a Annals piece several years ago, SNCC created this radical geospatial intelligence, and it's been really long under-discussed, if discussed at all, by civil rights scholars and cartographers, and we think it just opens up a huge, vast territory of thinking about cartography in the service of civil rights. So since our work with SNCC, we sought to explore black mapping traditions across many periods, many places, many political struggles, and this has resulted in some pieces in Geoforum, Cartographica, the Cartography Journal. If you need a sleep aid, I would encourage you to seek those papers out. I have a QR code at the end if someone's really not doing well here in the hotel with your sleep. It's okay to laugh at me. I laugh at myself every day. Our conceptualization of the Living Black Atlas is informed by bringing together really three big things. First, the black geographies literature, the critical cartographies literature, but really leaning very heavily on the brilliance of black community intellectuals, organizers, and mappers. And we recognize that the Living Black Atlas is certainly about resistance and protest, and that's what we learned from SNCC. But we also recognize that black communities do also map to heal and remake their worlds and their lives. And so that Living Black Atlas can also have a very restorative role to play. We see the Living Black Atlas, this sounds like an infomercial, so I apologize. We see the Living Black Atlas as a crucial opportunity to expand what is traditionally counted as a map, who has traditionally been defined as a mapper, and also traditionally what social work has been done by maps. Now, we don't have the time because you are a unscrupulous timekeeper. You're scaring the shit out of me up here. We don't have the time to really explore all the rich examples of the Living Black Atlas, but what I've done here is project 4 examples that are set in different eras, produce different cartographic products, and are achieving different forms of resistance and restoration. Importantly, these examples come from women of color who have played leading roles in what Bell Hooks famously called talking back to authority. The Living Black Atlas includes, for example, the efforts of the NAACP and Madeline Allison to map lynching murders in the early 20th century, as that organization was advocating for federal legislation to protect black Americans. It also refers to the artist Louise Jefferson's 1946 map of black America that celebrated the unrecognized black figures and landmarks. And more recently, a black female collective called We the People of Detroit have addressed water justice and mapped the impact of water shutoffs on poor communities. And then perhaps one of my favorite examples is Tanika Lewis Johnson out of Chicago, who has used photography, interviews with people to fold the Chicago street map in such a way that brings residents from the north and the south sides of segregated streets together to talk about racism, to talk about disparities. So this finally brings us to the title of the talk. How am I doing on time? You all right? All right. I'm scared of you, man. This finally brings us to the title of the talk, Where is the Living Black Atlas? And that question may seem very simple or very self-evident, particularly in light of what I've already shown you. But the question of where works at many levels if we are going to advance the Living Black Atlas the way that Josh and I think others would like. First, the question of where draws attention to how black mapping traditions have tended to be neglected or underappreciated in the canons of cartography and geography. And it prompts us to ask exactly why that neglect has existed. It's important to center the Living Black Atlas within our histories of cartography and mapping, to ensure that communities of color see themselves in that history. But that's not simply for the sake of having a gesture of diversity. We believe that the Living Black Atlas offers us a model of community-centered, socially responsible mapping that is accountable to the politics of life. And we think in that way it really projects forward what was done so many years ago, projects forward for what the future of cartography can do. The question of where also provokes us to consider where the Living Black Atlas resides as we try to recover and elevate black mapping traditions. To find and lift up the Living Black Atlas requires us to think about the ontology of the map. What is it? What does it look like? How does it function? And Josh and I have often asked by people, once we make presentations, where can I get or buy a copy of the Living Black Atlas? And this is an innocent question. It's a good question, but it's really at the heart of the problem. Because the Living Black Atlas is not just a collection of map artifacts and products, rather it's a dynamic set of socio-cartographic practices embedded in what Catherine McKittrick calls black livingness. So it takes a variety of embodied and artistic and everyday political forms to form the Living Black Atlas that move beyond just the traditional standard physical map. Now, Josh and I are interested, and we're ongoing and presently working on compiling educational resources to help sort of show the Living Black Atlas, but that really is not what that Black Atlas should be reduced to. Answering this question of where is the Living Black Atlas is really about opening ourselves up to the embodied storytelling of black social actors and groups. The body itself can serve as a form of mapping, as it moves across and assembles in places. It forms social spatial connections in self-determined ways. And in fact, the Living Black Atlas, even though it doesn't materialize in an actual physical standard map, is found at places like black festivals, family reunions, and neighborhood remembrance parties. These families don't just gather for these events to just have fun and eat great food, but they do so to remap and rejoin the communities that have been split apart by slavery, Jim Crow segregation, urban renewal, gentrification. There's a very radical dimension to those family get-togethers. The Living Black Atlas is also found on the guided tours led by Monique Wells in Paris, as she uses storytelling and walking as a form of embodied cartography to create a map of Black France that has actually at risk of being forgotten. So it's these stories and mobilities where the Living Black Atlas resides, that it resides along with all those traditional map formations. All right, so finally the question of where is the Living Black Atlas offers us a chance to recast and socially enrich geospatial concepts, including the very definition of where. So that's why the title is the way it is. I'm very clever, extremely brilliant, whatever. We suggest that the Living Black Atlas complicates the idea of where as simply a set of neutral coordinates or fixed locations on a map. The Black cartographic experience shows that where is politically and emotionally laden. For many Black communities, defining the where of their lives is part of the struggle to inhabit and belong within place. The Living Black Atlas challenges geographers and cartographers to see where is an ongoing negotiation of life, and we would add an ongoing negotiation of geographic knowledge. So in the Living Black Atlas, where is not simply where something is placed or indicated on a map, but it is about how that place has been contested, used, and felt by Black communities for many, many years, and in the present. So here are 3 Black cartographers. They may not see themselves as cartographers. Don't write them and say, I hear you're a cartographer. That's a label I'm putting on them. Here are 3 Black cartographers who actively are working to redefine the where of Black history and life. Thus, they are contributing to the Living Black Atlas. For example, through the Equal Justice Institute, Brian Stevenson has created a monument for peace and justice in Montgomery, Alabama. Raise your hand if you've been to that monument. There you go. A little participation. That monument memorializes and marks the location of Black victims of lynching. And it's Stevenson's attempt to build a public reckoning of that history to advance discussions of race in the present. Through the Texas Freedom Colony Project, Andrea Roberts has mapped the disappearing location of many all-Black settlements in an effort to advance historic preservation of those particular communities. And then through the Knoxville Beck Center, an organization I've worked with for many years, Reverend Renee Kessler, is mapping the where of black Knoxville communities that have been razed or demolished or displaced by urban renewal as part of her organization's attempt to push redevelopment and what she would call heritage justice. So all those cases are indicative of mapping, the Living Black Atlas, mapping that is used to destabilize dominant ideas of where that have made historically blacks invisible. 2 minutes, all right. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to run, this is a no-huddle offense. Those who are football fans know what I'm talking about. Finally, a laugh. Thank you, my friend. I do want to say that I'd like to end by directing your attention to the Green Book, which is one of my favorite topics of all time. I get a lot of mileage out of the Green Book in the classroom. And I want to draw your attention to the Green Book, which is an especially powerful example of how the Living Black Atlas arose to renegotiate the terms of where and belonging for black Americans. As you may know, the Green Book was a segregation-era travel guide created by Victor and Alma Green from the 1930s to the 60s to help black motorists navigate and resist Jim Crow highways and locate safe spaces for eating, staying, sleeping, fueling, entertainment. And although the Green Book contains no standard maps, it's a listing of accommodations by state, city, and street that provide an alternative anti-racist cartography of where black travelers could not only find resources, but wider black communities in other cities. It was in those communities that black travelers could have a where that was previously refused or denied to them. What's fascinating about the Green Book, I have a chapter coming out, and it'll be in the QR code if you'd like to look at it, that talks about the afterlives of the Green Book. So as part of the Living Black Atlas, what makes the Green Book especially powerful is that now it keeps being used to frame discussions and questions about the where of black life. Some scholars, such as Candace Taylor, have revisited the Green Book locations in the present to see where the black community is after desegregation, after highway development, urban renewal, gentrification. Some travel advocates, such as Martinique Lewis and Theo Edwards Butler, who's actually based right here in Louisville, have created modern versions of the Green Book to help people find black-owned businesses and inclusive travel destinations. I'm going to skip to the last slide here and just say in conclusion, this is pretty much what we were trying to do, trying to invite all of us to chronicle and amplify black mapping as a living insurgent tradition, let it unsettle and destabilize cartographic orthodoxies, and reframe foundational concepts, including the very idea of where. And this is not just about folding the Living Black Atlas into existing traditions. It's really about allowing the Living Black Atlas to remake the discipline itself. I know that's bold. I know I'm going to catch some hell afterwards, but that's sort of our thesis. And the question is not really where is the Living Black Atlas, but where will we let it take us? So thanks very much. And there's your QR code and a link if you're interested in more of the writings.
All right. Thank you so much, Derek.
Did I come in on time?
Yeah, you're great.
All right.
No, we have a couple time for a couple questions, and we got one in the back here.
So first off, I want to say thank you for providing a different view of cartography from a perspective that is different from the white majority academic perspective that a lot of people are used to. And second off, could the Living Black Atlas also expand in terms of how Native Americans, Asian Americans, Hispanic Americans do see where and when and how in spatial or geographic terms, and what can the future be for movements that want to represent the Living Native American Atlas or the Living Hispanic Atlas, because it's important to show different perspectives of non-white America that is part of America.
Yeah. No, that's a very good question. I appreciate it. I will tell you that, although we framed it very specifically in terms of the Living Black Atlas, we were highly inspired by folks like Anita Lucchese and the work being done in terms of recovering, decolonizing maps, recovering indigenous ways of mapping, Last time I was in Arizona, I attended a museum exhibit about Zuni art, which was very much Zuni art was very much about sort of their mapping traditions. And again, it pushed us beyond the traditional look of maps, but very much in that line. I think there's plenty of room, my friend, for those kinds of things, and I would encourage more of us to take whatever is of value here and expand it further. I think part of it is we have to ask ourselves, why is it that this seems somewhat new to many of us, and that includes me? And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that and I'll speak as a geographer. I was once president of the AAG. That as geographers, we have not been really paying enough attention to, I think, the black intellectual heritage that has always been around. And I would suggest that extends out to many different marginalized groups. And I think that's really about having more discussion. That's about having sessions at meetings that invite people who traditionally wouldn't attend this meeting, but they are actually doing the most innovative, radical, insurgent kind of cartographies. And then when we have them in the room, they learn about us, we learn about them, and then we can build points of collaboration to actually move to what you're describing. So thank you for that question.
All right, I think we're at time here, so thank you again, Derek. Excellent work.